Our next panel is on academic versus non-academic science careers and how to choose the right path. This panel will be hosted by Samuel Dada, PhD student at the University of Cambridge, with guests Danielle Tomasello, founder of The Social Scientist, and Pedro Resende, co-founder of Chaperone. So Sam, Pedro, and Danielle, please do put on your videos, take yourselves off mute, and Sam, over to you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for the warm welcome, Alice. Hope you guys are all enjoying the Hello Bio LabLife Conference so far. Like Alice said, I'm going to be chairing this next panel discussion on identifying your next career steps, which is essentially, to me, the battle between staying in academia or going elsewhere and looking at non-academic science careers. I'm joined by, Pedro Resende and Danielle Tomasello, and I'm in a place and a position in my life where I'm currently in my final year of my PhD in chemistry in the department at University of Cambridge, and I'm currently exploring what career options I should take. So I'm really excited for the conversation that we're going to be having today with this well-esteemed scientist, and I can't wait to find out and maybe even get some insight as to whether I'm making the right career decisions or not. So I would like the first panelist, Pedro, to kind of give a brief introduction about his career and how he's been able to navigate to where he is right now.
Hi, Sam, and hi, everyone in the meeting. It has been an amazing meeting so far. I've been following it, and congrats on the organization of this. Well, I'm from Portugal. I'm a biologist. I'm celebrating 20 years of my career this year. 10 years as a non-PhD and 10 years after my PhD. So I've had many different roles in academia and outside of academia. As an academic researcher, I now lead my independent line of research in stem cell biology at I3S Porto. And outside of academia, I work in the pharmaceutical industry at Pfizer. I worked as external consultant for the Ministry of Health for the areas of innovation here in Portugal. I worked in companies of science communication and outreach. And more recently, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm co-founder and director of Chaperone, which is a company that provides career development for scientists. And I'm a proud father of a 2-year-old baby. It's a big part of my life now.
Oh, wow, that's absolutely amazing, absolutely incredible. It shows that there's so much more around there, and you can also kind of combine both, academic and non-academic careers together. Danielle, do you mind introducing yourself and also, your journey and, your career right now and what you're currently doing?
Yeah, hi, everyone. Thank you, Sam. I'm really excited to be here today. So I am a postdoc at the Whitehead Institute, which is part of MIT here in Massachusetts. And I have been a postdoc now for close to 6.5 years. So been here for quite a bit. And back in 2018, I started The Social Scientist, which is a nonprofit STEM platform for one-on-one mentorship. So my background is the neuroscience field. I'm really interested in utilizing human stem cells to model different neurodevelopmental disorders. But I really, truly have such a passion for mentorship. And I hope to essentially give everyone across the globe access to very enthusiastic and passionate mentors to help with all of their career aspects in the STEM field.
Wow, absolutely stunning. Thank you so much, both, for your brief introduction. And we're going to get cracking into the questions and the part where everyone wants to know about. So I'm going to go first with Danielle. How do you identify whether an academic career is right for you?
My personal opinion is you don't. I think that you should give it a try. So this was something I struggled with for quite a while. I wanted to know what I wanted to do, and having uncertainty really stressed me out. But I remember after like talking, and a couple of people mentioned this, after talking to a couple of academic professors, they said that they wanted to give academia a try, as opposed to what you do, what you apply to an academic position, and that's where you're at for the rest of your life. And I think that that kind of opens my mind to, wow, well, this is just an avenue that I can take and see if I like it. If I'm not happy with it, there's absolutely no reason to stay in the field. So I have a number of friends that have left academia and are much happier in biotech or science communication. And I have plenty of friends that are in academia and they absolutely love it. So I think there's so many aspects that contribute to how your career goes and how happy you are in your career. So say, for instance, you are in a department where you just really don't get along with the chair, and there are just some factors that just don't overall help with how your career prospect is going. So maybe it's better to switch to a different university, go to a different department. But I think that you try your best. If you are really interested in academia, do your best, do a great postdoc, try to hit all of those hallmarks that academia is trying to look for, such as getting fellowships, being independent, publications, and give it a try.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. I think that's quite a reasonable thing, because I think that's something I'm kind of battling with, because I love the kind of the freedom and flexibility academia gives me. However, I guess a lack of structure is something I really crave for at the same time. So it's kind of that battle between what I want and what other places has to offer as well. But Pedro, I know you're kind of, you're basically dabbling between so many different things. It will be great to get your insight on these questions, knowing whether, to stay in academia, or if there's a way of having a both, or maybe a combination of both, like you clearly are having.
Yes, I think the short and easy answer is by being informed. So you need to make informed decisions. But if we dig into this, like how can you get informed? Well, I would recommend you talk to people who have opted to stay in academia, and obviously people who have left. Ideally, that have made this decision like recently, not like 15 years ago, because then the context then might have changed, and you might receiving information that is outdated. So that's an important step to being informed. I think you should get advice from like people who are experienced in careers. In my role, I must be an advocate for this. Talk to career counselors, career coaches, career advisors, talk to supervisors, talk to mentors. These are all like relevant stakeholders in the career field that can help you with this question. And also experiment. That's something that I've done very early on in my career. And before career, like 10 years ago, careers were much more stable. Now they are super dynamic. Now people should, rather than like do career planning, people should do career prototyping. They should expose themselves like to different short experience in different fields and learn from that. Like because some roles they might seem like ideal from you, but once you've tried them out, you might get a different feeling from that experience. So prototyping early on in your career is key. So think long term. I know that in the short term this might have an impact because you're experimenting, you're not progressing as fast, but in the long term it will be super useful.
Wonderful. I think that's definitely a very good idea and an answer. That's something I've tried to do as well, because a lot of places, and I think a lot of PhD programs do have the ability for you to do maybe an internships. For example, I'm on the BBSRC DTP in the UK, and we have that ability of having an industrial placement. So this gives you the opportunity to see what's kind of out there. Because I guess most people, when you're doing a PhD, you're already in the academic sphere. So, exploring what's out there and seeing whether actually, is that suited to me or not, could be a great way of experimenting. And doing that is definitely perfect kind of stepping stone to making those crucial decisions in the long term. So in terms of exploring, when you were in this position, how did you go about, researching and actually looking, apart from obviously asking people, knowing, what's the right path for you? How did you go about that? Did you go about it in terms of a systematic way where you looked at, okay, this is what I want from life? Or did you go about it and just saying, oh, this is what I currently enjoy? Or did you just go about it by just grabbing any opportunities that kind of came around your way? How did you kind of navigate around this space, Danielle?
So just navigating, going like into academia in general?
Yes.
Or?
Yes.
Okay.
How did you decide, like, was it just something that you were like, okay, I'm staying right here? Or were you able to kind of explore things beforehand?
Yes. So I did my PhD in the pain field, and this was my first time in the neuroscience field. Absolutely loved it, and I knew I wanted to continue in the neuroscience field, but the pain field was particularly difficult for me, just utilizing mouse models and having pain models. It was really hard. So I knew I wanted to stay in neuroscience, and I was very interested in human stem cell research. And I knew that no matter where I went afterwards, that having a background with stem cell research would be beneficial for my career. And so that was like one main reason for why I wanted to do a postdoc. I generally looked for postdocs in any areas of interest for me in neuroscience. And then I ended up with, a postdoc and working with neurodevelopment, but I could have very easily done a postdoc in many other fields in the neuroscience. So ultimately, this was a good career move for me. I also was very interested in coming to Boston just because there are so many opportunities here. So it just made the most sense for what I wanted to do.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Pedro, I know that you were talking about, exploring, other things. How did you go about that? Exploring other kind of careers and potentials before deciding what route to take?
I think exploration is super important, and I think I've done it in many different ways. I use the advice that I mentioned from different people that I've talked to. I obviously use LinkedIn as well. Like LinkedIn is a very useful tool for this kind of like research, and I kind of had this mindset of not worrying too much, at least early on in my career, whether that was like the best, well, I'm not gonna say the best, but like the ideal decision or not. I was not afraid to experiment. So that gave me freedom in terms of what path to choose. But also like I was surfing the wave, like whatever came into my encounter in terms of options, I said, okay, let's do this. It seems to make sense, and then digest things only after having the real experiment, like not thinking too much. I think that was kind of like the approach I had early on in my career.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you for that. So what would you say are your top tips for, early career scientists who are looking to maybe transition from academia to the professional world? What would you say would be your top tips for them, Pedro?
Well, I often get the question of what are the three meta skills I think are more important for me, and these are like, I think number one, health and well-being. It's often neglected, but I've seen so many colleagues of mine who are like excellent professionals, great potential, having a very negative impact on their careers just because they neglect their health and well-being. Is so common in academia, so common in academia. Like 2 out of 5 academics suffer from depression, for example, in throughout their careers. So health and well-being skills is something that we all should develop. That having a growth mindset, I think it's super important. Like you need to be constantly willing to improve yourself, reskilling, upskilling, but also having this mentality of like, if you embrace a project or if you join a team, you want that team to be better with you. And when you leave, you want that team to be better than when you started. So having this growth mindset of you constantly growing in whatever team and project you're going, it needs to be better. It's also super useful. And then lastly, I know it was mentioned here before in other talks, empathy. I think empathy is the basis for many things, including learning. Like if you're empathetic, like you'll be an active listener. You'll be an efficient networker. You'll be an efficient learner. And for me, it's very hard to imagine someone who is good on health and well-being, has growth mindset, and has empathy skills that is not a successful professional. If you combine these three, but if you miss one of these, it's enough.
Thank you so much for that insight.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Danielle, in terms of obviously people who are looking at transitioning from, from one academic kind of career in terms of topics to a different topic, totally, because that's something that you've been able to do. How do you go about it? Because sometimes in academia, you're sometimes just kind of boxed in, especially when you've done a PhD, you're doing this project and everyone just expects you to want to delve in more into that specific topic. So how do you transition? How have you been able to do that? And what advice would you give people?
Yeah, absolutely. So postdoc life is definitely different from a PhD life, and it can be very isolating. During your PhD or your master's, you come in as a cohort with your students and you all work together and you all know what's going on in different labs. But as a postdoc, it can definitely be isolating. So going to opportunities, doing career event opportunities is very helpful. And honestly, try to be a tiny bit extroverted and get to know other people in different labs, because they can always collaborate or help you out. But I would say that looking for other opportunities, doing something like the Hello Bio LabLife Conference is awesome, because you get exposure to different career opportunities and awesome advice from all of the invited panelists. And I also think that you can look for other opportunities. So for instance, I have a friend that he was really interested in industry, but he was having a hard time going straight from a PhD. So what he ended up doing was a postdoc in industry. So even though he was, making a bit less than he would if he was like a scientist at the company, he then, after he finished a very quick postdoc there, he then climbed up the ladder so much more than if he were to have gone there directly. So that's definitely an opportunity that was great for him, because he was also able to publish papers. So he was just able to kind of somewhat continue a slightly academic lifestyle, but in opportunity, and then it really increased his career prospects. And then I think for other career prospects, for instance, if you're interested in science communication, what was really great is that you can pitch articles or pitch, small little synopsis to different journals or to news outlets. And that's what I did with The Social Scientist. When I created it, I reached out to, Nature, I reached out to Scientific American. I said, hey, I have this awesome new platform. Can I write about it? And they're like, absolutely. But you don't have to, do something so big. You can also write about what career, what you think career opportunities are as a postdoc. You can write about anything. So there are always opportunities to write, which I think is great. Other things such as looking for certifications or taking additional courses, like for instance, MIT is on edX, which is a great way to increase a couple of courses that you're interested in, or certifications such as data science is really big. It's kind of becoming almost indisposable in the life science field and bioinformatics, so having that background is great. And then additionally, I would just recommend having really great mentors or collaborators that can provide those letter recommendations for when you do want to transition out.
Oh, wonderful. That leads into one of the questions from someone in the audience who says, what do you think, how important do you think having a good mentor is in helping in choosing the right career path? And I know that's something you do as well with the social scientist.
Yeah, I honestly think it's indispensable. I would not be where I am today without the great mentors that I had. And that was honestly the reason I created the social scientist. I reached out to those same people that have helped me in my career, and those became the first mentors that I had on my platform. And then ultimately it grew from there. But I think that it really is indispensable. I've gotten so much great career advice that I could not have done otherwise.
Wonderful, thank you. And Pedro, in terms of being able to navigate, especially into like policy, which I've seen that you've been working on, you know, how can a student, for example, who wants to get involved in something like that, do that from such an early starting point?
Well, you can look for think tanks. I think think tanks, we have a lot of these days, and they are open for applications from different people from different backgrounds, from like scientists, engineers, any kind of like background. Like and think tanks are a great way like to meet people that work or at least are interested in working in public policies, and go from there. Like start talking to people who are in there. Start, probably they will have guests in the events they organize. There are people who like are already committed in working in that area, and talk with them. Yeah, I think that would be my first option, to start with think tanks, and go from there.
Wonderful. I guess the general aspect of this is like just grabbing every opportunity, enhancing your skills, and just building that up constantly and improving yourself, because I guess, you know, the world is evolving and you need to always equip yourself with all those skills so you can literally have the choice of dabbling whether you want to go into academia or stay in academia, or go into industry or even non-academic or scientific careers in general. So before we end the session, I just wanted to just take one last bit of your input, and wanted to ask both of you, what are your top 3 professional skills you think every life scientist should develop?
Should I go, Sam?
Yes.
So I would say that the absolute top skill that absolutely none of us are taught is management. I remember just recently I asked my mentor, she was my PI when I was a technician long ago, and she's kind of become a very close friend of mine. I said, what has been the hardest thing about academia? And she said, it's not about grant writing, it's not about papers, it has everything to do with managing her team. That has been the hardest thing. So learn management skills, learn how to individualize management based on the person's needs and kind of how best they would respond. I would say multitasking is very important, and figuring out how to prioritize what's very necessary at that moment, and trying not to get too bogged down with how much you're going to endure. And then last, writing. I think that Jasmine did such a great job with tips for writing, and I think that no matter what field you go into, being able to communicate your science and being able to like do quick elevator pitches about your work is just very important overall.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that insight, Danielle. Pedro, do you have any take on this as well? What are your top 3 professional skills you think every life scientist should develop?
Well, in addition to the ones I previously mentioned, and to the ones Danielle pointed out, which I was hearing and thinking, well, I'm left out of options because she was kind of picking the ones I was going to pick. But I will try to have 1 or 2. I think networking is a skill in itself, and it's super useful. And I would add negotiation as well, on not in a like more formal sense of it, but you always negotiate different things with your supervisor, with whether you're arguing in a rebuttal letter in the paper that you submit, you're negotiating. So that's a useful skill also to have for career progression. I would add those two in addition to all the other ones, which I think are like super important.
Wonderful. That's very insightful. Thank you so much. I would like to add just one last one. I think that I found that has been very important in terms of career progression as I've kind of gone through my academic career, is the ability to collaborate with people. I think that's something that sometimes is neglected, especially when we're in this kind of PhD sphere where we're taught about, you know, the acts of independence and working by yourself and all of that, that we forget that, you know, when we're looking into science or even looking into diseases, it's so important to collaborate and get some insights from other people and work together towards that common goal. So I think that's also one of the most crucial one. And, you know, the act of collaboration, you can apply to any single, workplace you find yourself in. It's not just in academia, it's literally anywhere you go. But yeah, thank you so much, Pedro and Danielle, for your insights and for your contribution towards identifying your next career steps. I found this so insightful and so useful. And I think, yeah, I guess this has made my decision a little bit harder since the arguments have been very, very fair. But thank you so much for everyone who's attended this session. We'll now have a 15-minute break. And I guess the panelists will be staying back to answer any questions in the chat. But we'll be back at 3:45, where we'll get a talk into getting your writing published by Bronwyn Martin from the University of Antwerp. Thank you so much, guys, for joining the session. I'll leave it to Alice to round it up.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Danielle, Pedro, and Sam. That was super, super helpful. And there have been a number of questions in the chat as well. Danielle, Pedro, if you are able to just hang on for a little bit and just come back on some of those questions in the chat, that would be absolutely amazing. And we will, for those of you watching on the recording, we will be capturing everything that's been in the chat, any kind of hot topics for discussion, and we will be using that to create some more content for our blog, so your questions, your comments are super, super helpful. So thank you so much, everyone. We will take another 15-minute break, as Sam said, and we will be back at 3:45 with Bronwyn's talk on getting your writing published. Thank you so much.